The expendable asset. Commander Vexel's upper eye membranes flickered with annoyance as he studied the personnel file on his datapad. The Galactic Coalition forces had sent him a human. A human. The bipedal species from that backwater death world, Earth. The Coalition classified humans as Class 3 Deathworlders, barely sophisticated enough for spaceflight, yet somehow hardy enough to survive conditions that would kill most sentient species. Lieutenant Jason, Vexel read aloud, his voice resonating in the crystalline chamber of the Regellian starbase. Combat specialist, survival expert, adaptive tactical theorist. Hemph. His second-in-command, Zarlax of the Ventari Collective, clicked her mandibles skeptically. Commander, with all due respect, I cannot fathom why Central Command would assign a human to the Twilight Battalion. We are the Coalition's elite strike force. Politics. Vexel spat the word like it was poison. The Terran Alliance joined the Coalition 3 solar cycles ago. They need representation. We need warm bodies for the Craxus campaign. He tossed the datapad onto his desk. The human will serve as our forward scout, a useful role for an expendable asset. Zarlax's compound eyes reflected the ambient light in geometric patterns. The death rate for scouts in Craxus territory is 78.3%. Precisely. The door to the command center slid open, and both officers straightened reflexively. High General Drovek, a massive titanian with metallic skin that absorbed light rather than reflected it, entered with his usual gravitas. Commander Vexel, I trust you've reviewed the personnel edition. Drovek's voice rumbled like distant thunder. Yes, General, though I remain unconvinced of the tactical advantage. Your concerns are noted, Commander, but the decision stands. Drovek's tone left no room for debate. The human arrives within the hour. Make the necessary arrangements. After Drovek departed, Vexel turned to Zarlax. Prepare the Crucible simulation for our new arrival. Standard protocol for Deathworlders. Set difficulty at 60% of normal. We don't want to traumatize the poor creature on its first day. Jason Chen stepped off the transport shuttle, his duffel bag slung over one shoulder, and took his first breath of artificial atmosphere on Regellian starbase. 6 months of Coalition orientation training had prepared him for the lighter gravity and higher oxygen content, but nothing quite prepared him for the sheer scale of alien architecture. The ceiling soared at least 50 meters above, with crystalline support structures that seemed to defy physics. A slender, blue-skinned humanoid approached. Lieutenant Chen, I am Liaison Officer Kala. I've been assigned to facilitate your integration into the Twilight Battalion. Jason nodded respectfully. Thank you, Officer Kala. I appreciate the welcome. The commander requests your presence in Training Sector 7 immediately. No time for quarters assignment. Please follow me. As they traversed the sprawling base, Jason noticed the stares from various alien species. Some curious, some dismissive, some openly hostile. Earth had only recently joined the Galactic Coalition, and humans were still something of a novelty, especially in elite military units. They've never seen a human before, Jason asked quietly. Most have not, Kala replied without turning. And those who have typically encountered them in less prestigious capacities. As cannon fodder, you mean? Kala's stride faltered slightly. That would be an inappropriate characterization, Lieutenant, but an accurate one, Jason said evenly. Before Kala could respond, they arrived at Training Sector 7, an enormous domed facility filled with what appeared to be holographic combat simulations in various stages of execution. Near the center stood a group of officers, led by a tall amphibian-like being with iridescent scales. Commander Vexel, Kala announced, Lieutenant Jason Chen of Earth, reporting as ordered. Vexel's upper eye membranes flickered again as he studied Jason. So this is a human, smaller than I expected. Jason kept his expression neutral. During orientation, they'd stressed the importance of not displaying emotion too overtly around certain species. It could be misinterpreted as aggression or weakness. "Thank you for the warm welcome, Commander," Jason said, noting the irony wasn't lost on the blue-skinned Kala, who shifted uncomfortably. "Lieutenant Chen," Vexel continued, "the Twilight Battalion is the Coalition's premier special operations unit. We operate behind enemy lines, in hostile territories, often without support for extended periods. Do you believe yourself capable of such duties?" "I wouldn't be here if I didn't, sir." "Indeed. Well, we shall see. We've prepared a standard orientation exercise, the Crucible. It will assess your basic aptitudes in a controlled environment. Officer Kala will direct you to the preparation area." As Jason turned to follow Kala, Vexel added, "We've adjusted the parameters to accommodate your species limitations. Don't worry, Lieutenant. No one expects you to match our standard metrics." Jason paused but didn't turn around. "That's very considerate, Commander." Zarlax observed from the control booth as the human donned the neural interface suit. The black, form-fitting material contained millions of sensory nodes that would translate the simulation's virtual stimuli into nerve impulses the brain would interpret as reality. "Is the human ready?" Vexel asked as he entered the booth. "Almost, Commander. The interface is calibrating to human neural patterns. It's unusual." "In what way?" Zarlax gestured to the readouts. "Their neural activity is highly chaotic, yet organized in patterns I've never seen. The system is struggling to establish baseline parameters. Increase the buffer range by 20%. We don't want the system to overload." On the preparation floor below, Jason finished securing the last neural node to his temple. The sensation was strange, like having thousands of tiny, cold fingers pressing against his skin simultaneously. "The Crucible simulation will begin momentarily, Lieutenant," Kala's voice came through the comm. "Remember, this is merely an assessment. The scenario is a standard extraction mission in hostile territory. Your objective is to reach the designated extraction point with the target package. You will encounter resistance along the way." "Understood," Jason replied. "Any specific parameters I should be aware of?" There was a brief pause. "The simulation has been calibrated for human physiology. Good luck, Lieutenant." The world around Jason dissolved, reforming into a dense alien jungle. Massive trees with purple-tinted foliage stretched upward, their canopies blocking most of the light from what appeared to be a binary star system. The air was thick with humidity and strange, spicy scents. A heads-up display materialized in his field of vision, showing a navigation marker 2.3 kilometers northeast, along with basic environmental readings. The temperature registered at 40 degrees Celsius. Hot, but manageable. Gravity was 0.8 Earth standard. Jason took a moment to orient himself, then began moving toward the objective, careful to maintain situational awareness. The terrain was challenging, uneven, with hidden sinkholes and tangling vines that seemed almost purposeful in their placement. After covering about 500 meters, his enhanced hearing picked up a faint whirring sound. He dropped into a crouch immediately, scanning the underbrush. 3 small, spherical drones emerged, each equipped with what appeared to be short-range energy weapons. Jason remained motionless as the drones executed a standard search pattern, a mistake that many species made when designing autonomous security systems. They relied on movement detection rather than heat signatures or other identifiers. When the nearest drone passed within 2 meters, Jason launched himself in a controlled but explosive movement. He grabbed the drone before its sensors could register the threat, redirecting its weapon toward the second drone. A brief energy pulse erupted, disabling the second drone instantly. Jason then smashed the first drone against a tree trunk, before rolling to avoid fire from the third. Using the disabled drone as a makeshift shield, he advanced on the third, deflecting its energy pulses until he was close enough to disable it with a precisely aimed kick. The entire encounter had taken less than 10 seconds. In the control booth, silence fell as the operators watched the display. "Did he just?" Zarlax began. "Increase difficulty to standard parameters," Vexel ordered sharply. But Commander, the human. Standard parameters. Officer Zarlax. Now, Jason continued his advance, noting subtle changes in the environment. The vegetation became denser, the terrain more treacherous. The ambient sounds of the jungle faded, replaced by an unnatural silence that any experienced operative would recognize as a prelude to danger. He wasn't disappointed. A squad of 6 humanoid combatants emerged from concealed positions, their forms shifting to blend with the background. Advanced adaptive camouflage. They carried what appeared to be plasma rifles, military-grade with precision targeting systems. This just got interesting, Jason muttered to himself. In the control booth, Vexel leaned forward. Let's see how the human handles a standard combat squad. These simulations are based on Craxus Special Forces, the same units we'll face in our upcoming mission. The first plasma bolt streaked past Jason's head, close enough that he could feel the heat signature through the neural interface. He dove behind a massive tree root, assessing his options. The standard-issue Coalition sidearm materialized at his hip, part of the simulation parameters. Jason drew the weapon, checked its charge indicator, and took a deep breath. Then, in a move that stunned the observers, he broke cover in a full sprint, not away from the attackers, but directly toward them. The unexpected tactic caught the simulated enemies off guard. They'd been programmed with standard Coalition combat protocols, which emphasized cover and tactical positioning over direct engagement. Jason's frontal assault violated every principle of their training. He fired 3 precise shots while running, each finding its mark. 3 combatants down. The remaining 3 adjusted, spreading out to create a crossfire zone, a textbook response to a frontal assault. Jason didn't slow down. Instead, he accelerated, dropping into a baseball slide that carried him beneath the crossfire pattern. From the ground, he eliminated the 4th combatant with a clean headshot, then rolled to his feet inside the defensive perimeter of the remaining 2. At close quarters, the plasma rifles became unwieldy. The simulated enemies attempted to switch to sidearms, but Jason was already moving. A disarming strike to the nearest opponent's wrist, followed by an elbow to the throat. The last combatant managed to draw his weapon, but Jason was too close, too fast. A sweeping leg takedown followed by a decisive finishing move. 6 elite combatants, neutralized in under 30 seconds. In the control booth, Zarlax's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation among her species. Commander, the human's combat efficiency rating is. I don't think the system is calibrated correctly. Vexel stared at the readouts, his amphibian features unreadable. What is the rating, Officer Zarlax? 94.3%, sir. That's 23 points above the battalion average. Vexel's eyes narrowed. Maximum difficulty. Now, Commander, protocol states. Maximum difficulty. Officer, I want to see what this human is truly capable of. In the simulation, Jason retrieved the target package, a small data core, from a secured installation with surprising ease. He was halfway to the extraction point when the environment shifted dramatically. The jungle disappeared, replaced by a barren, rocky landscape with minimal cover. The twin suns beat down mercilessly, and the HUD showed the temperature soaring to 60 degrees Celsius. Then came the rumbling, deep, rhythmic impacts that shook the ground beneath his feet. Well, that's not good, Jason muttered as a massive, armored quadruped crested a nearby ridge. The creature stood at least 15 meters tall, with armor plating that rippled across its body like liquid metal. Multiple weapon systems protruded from hardpoints along its spine and flanks. In the control booth, even Vexel looked concerned. A Craxus war beast. That's beyond maximum difficulty. That wasn't in the parameters I authorized. Zarlax's voice was tight. The system upgraded the scenario automatically based on the human's performance metrics. It's trying to find his threshold. On the battlefield, Jason assessed the approaching war beast with a calm that belied the extreme danger. The creature's movement patterns suggested a sophisticated AI, not a simple program. Its sensors would be tracking heat signatures, movement patterns, and probably even respiration. Jason spotted a narrow ravine to his right, too small for the war beast to enter, but potentially a death trap if the creature could target him inside. On his left, a field of boulders offered inconsistent cover, but more mobility options. He chose the boulders, darting from cover to cover as the war beast opened fire. Explosive rounds impacted around him, sending shrapnel flying in all directions. The neural interface translated this into sharp pain across his back and legs, not debilitating, but certainly attention-getting. Jason circled wide, using the terrain to force the war beast to constantly adjust its firing angle. The massive creature was powerful, but relatively slow to pivot, a weakness he could exploit. As he maneuvered, Jason spotted a critical vulnerability: the joint where the creature's main cannon connected to its power core, a small gap in the armor, visible only from certain angles. It was a near impossible shot. Moving target, extreme range, with environmental factors that would affect ballistics. But Jason had trained for impossible shots his entire military career. He found a stable position, steadied his breathing, and waited for the perfect moment. The war beast turned to track his last known position, exposing the vulnerable connection point. Jason fired once. The shot threaded through the gap, impacting the power coupling within. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a cascade of secondary explosions rippled through the war beast's systems. The massive creature staggered, its weapon systems failing in sequence before collapsing to the ground with a thunderous impact. In the control booth, absolute silence reigned. Simulation complete, the automated system announced. Extraction successful. Mission parameters exceeded. Final efficiency rating, 98.7%. Vexel stared at the readout, then at the human who stood calmly amid the simulated devastation. "Get him out of there," the commander ordered quietly, "and schedule a full battalion briefing for 800 tomorrow. It seems we have much to reconsider about our upcoming mission." As the simulation dissolved around him, Jason removed the neural interface nodes, his movements methodical and precise. He could see the observers in the control booth through the transparent barrier, their expressions a mixture of shock, disbelief, and in at least one case, what might have been fear. "Did the assessment meet your requirements, Commander?" Jason asked, his voice carrying clearly through the comm system. Vexel seemed to collect himself. "Report to medical for standard post-simulation evaluation, Lieutenant. Then to my office at 1900 hours. Jason nodded respectfully. "Looking forward to it, sir." As he walked away, Jason allowed himself a small smile. First impressions were important, after all. In his private chambers, Vexel reviewed the simulation data for the third time. The results were undeniable, yet difficult to reconcile with his understanding of human capabilities. His comm unit chimed. "Commander," came Zarlax's voice. "High General Drovak is requesting an update on the human's assessment." Vexel hesitated, then made a decision that would alter the course of the Twilight Battalion forever. "Inform the General that Lieutenant Chen has exceeded all expectations and will be integrated into the primary strike team for the Craxus operation." "Sir." Zarlax's surprise was evident even through the comm. "You heard me, officer. And Zarlax, schedule a review of our standard combat protocols. It seems we may have something to learn from our new colleague. Respect earned." The atmosphere in Briefing Room Alpha was charged with tension as the elite members of the Twilight Battalion filed in. Jason stood near the back, observing the diverse collection of species that comprised the Coalition's most formidable strike force. They, in turn, watched him with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright skepticism. Sorvin, a Kalian with translucent skin that revealed the complex flow of luminescent fluids through his vascular system, approached Jason. As the battalion's lead infiltration specialist, Sorvin rarely spoke to newcomers. "Your performance in the Crucible was unexpected, human," he said, his voice a melodic whisper. Many here believe it was a statistical anomaly. Jason met his gaze evenly. Then I look forward to providing more data points. Sorvin's fluid channels pulsed with blue light. Amusement, Jason had learned during orientation. Commander Vexel has altered our mission parameters because of you. That has never happened before. Before Jason could respond, Commander Vexel entered, followed by Zarlax and a hulking mechasepian whose metallic exoskeleton hummed with barely contained energy. Drak, the battalion's heavy weapons specialist. Attend, Vexel announced, and the room fell silent immediately. The Craxus operation has been accelerated. Intelligence indicates their forces are mobilizing for a major offensive against Coalition outposts in the Cygnus sector. Our mission is to neutralize their command structure before the offensive can launch. Holographic displays activated, showing a fortified installation nestled within a mountain range on a distant world. The structure appeared to be partially embedded in the rock, with multiple defensive layers. This is Outpost Vorish, the Craxus Forward Command Center, Vexel continued. Previously, our approach strategy involved a three-pronged infiltration team working in sequence to breach the outer defenses, inner security, and finally the command core. Zarlax stepped forward. Based on new tactical assessments, we have revised this approach. Lieutenant Chen will lead a diversionary team to draw attention to the southern approach, while the main strike team infiltrates from the east. Murmurs spread through the assembled specialists. A gruff voice rose above the others. Krell, a veteran Braxian known for his direct manner. With respect, Commander, we're trusting our tactical success to an untested human. Based on one simulation. Vexel's upper eye membranes contracted, a sign of irritation. Lieutenant Chen's crucible performance established his capabilities beyond question, Specialist Krell. Unless you believe you could do better. Krell's scaled crest flattened against his skull, a sign of submission among his species. No, Commander. The mission launches in 12 hours, Vexel concluded. Team assignments and equipment requisitions will be distributed immediately. Dismissed. As the battalion dispersed, Vexel gestured for Jason to remain. When they were alone except for Zarlax, the commander's demeanor shifted subtly. Lieutenant Chen, I admit I had reservations about your assignment to this unit. However, your capabilities warrant reconsideration. Thank you, Commander. I appreciate the opportunity to contribute. Yes, well. Vexel seemed uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. There is a matter of some sensitivity I wish to discuss. The diversionary team assignment is genuine, but it serves another purpose as well. Jason waited patiently. Craxus forces have never encountered humans in combat, Vexel continued. This presents a tactical advantage we intend to exploit. Their defense systems and combat protocols are calibrated for known coalition species. You want to see how they respond to an unknown variable, Jason concluded. Precisely. Your team will consist of Specialist Draff and Specialist Sorvin, our most adaptable operatives. You will have discretion to modify the diversionary approach as you see fit, provided you maintain the primary objective of drawing defensive resources away from the eastern approach. Jason nodded thoughtfully. Commander, if I may, I've studied the Craxus tactical doctrines provided during orientation. Their emphasis on technological superiority creates specific vulnerabilities that a human approach might effectively exploit. Vexel's eyes narrowed with interest. Explain. Craxus defense systems anticipate conventional coalition tactics, systematic, methodical approaches that prioritize minimizing casualties. Human military history suggests that unpredictability and calculated risk-taking can disrupt such systems more effectively than technical countermeasures. Vexel exchanged a glance with Zarlax. You propose to apply historical human tactics to this operation, with modifications suitable for the environment and opposition. Yes, it would increase the effectiveness of the diversion, while potentially revealing exploitable weaknesses in Craxus' defensive doctrine. A long silence followed as Vexel considered this. Finally, he nodded. Approved, Lieutenant. but know that the lives of your team members rest on your judgment." "Understood, Commander." "One last thing, Lieutenant." Vexel's tone hardened slightly. "While I acknowledge your capabilities, this battalion operates as a unified force. We succeed or fail together. Is that clear?" "Crystal clear, sir. I'm here to contribute, not compete." "Good. Because regardless of species, we are all coalition fighters now." 6 hours later, Jason sat in the battalion's tactical planning room with Draft and Sorvin, reviewing holographic schematics of Outpost 4ish. "Your proposed approach is unconventional," Sorvin observed, his luminescent fluids pulsing with patterns that suggested both interest and concern. "Unconventional is precisely the point," Jason replied. "Krax's forces expect coalition teams to prioritize stealth and precision. They won't anticipate a high-visibility, seemingly reckless approach." Drax's mechanical voice emerged from his exoskeleton's vocalization unit. "The calculated risk exceeds standard parameters. Survival probability 62.7%. Jason smiled slightly. "That's actually better odds than some missions I ran on Earth." "You find this amusing?" Sorvin asked, genuinely curious. "Not at all. But human military history is filled with examples of impossible missions that succeeded precisely because they seemed impossible. The enemy discounts possibilities they consider too unlikely to defend against. A psychological approach to a technological problem." Drac concluded, his analytical systems processing the concept. "Intriguing." Jason manipulated the holographic display, highlighting specific sections of the outpost's defensive perimeter. These automated defense systems operate on predictive algorithms. They anticipate movement patterns and firing solutions based on known coalition tactics. If we deliberately violate those expected patterns, the systems will be forced to recalibrate in real time. Sorvin finished, his fluid channels now pulsing with excited blue light, creating momentary lapses in coverage. "Exactly. And while their systems are adjusting, we'll exploit the gaps to advance much faster than they'll anticipate. By the time they've adapted, we'll already be at the secondary perimeter." Drax's exoskeleton hummed as his internal systems ran probability calculations. Revised survival probability 78.3%. "Acceptable." "I'm honored," Jason said dryly. Sorvin studied Jason with newfound interest. "You believe this approach would work against any technologically superior force?" "It's not a universal solution," Jason clarified. "It works specifically against enemies who rely heavily on predictive systems and established protocols, who lack tactical flexibility. From what I've studied, the Kraxes fit that profile perfectly." The three continued refining the plan until Zarlax entered the room. The commander requests a final briefing before launch. As they gathered their tactical displays, Sorvin asked quietly, "Lieutenant, is it true that humans evolved on a planet with over 200 independent nations, many constantly at war with each other?" "Earth's history is complex," Jason acknowledged. "But yes, conflict was common." "Then perhaps," Sorvin mused, "what the Coalition classifies as a disadvantage, your species' fractured development, might actually be your greatest strength." "How so?" "Diversity of tactics. Most coalition species developed under unified planetary governments, with standardized military doctrines. Your species created thousands of different approaches to warfare, tested against each other over centuries." Jason had never considered it from that perspective. An evolutionary crucible for military tactics. "Precisely." Sorvin's fluid channels pulsed with academic excitement. "Fascinating." The assault craft dropped from the Coalition stealth carrier in high orbit, its heat-dispersing shields glowing faintly as it penetrated Vorish's atmosphere. Inside, Jason checked his equipment one final time. Standard Coalition combat armor modified for human physiology, and a selection of weapons he'd chosen specifically for this mission. "Approaching drop zone," the pilot announced. "Defensive grid still unaware of our presence." Vexel's voice came through the comm. All teams, final confirmation. Eastern Infiltration Team. Status. Ready, Commander, came the response from Krell, who led that element. Diversionary Team. Status. Jason glanced at Sorvin and Draf, both indicating readiness. Green across the board. Commander, ready to make some noise. Remember, Lieutenant, your objective is to create a convincing diversion, not to engage in a direct assault. The success of the primary mission depends on you drawing defensive resources away from the eastern approach. Understood, Commander. We'll give them something to think about. The assault craft touched down in a small canyon 3 kilometers from the southern entrance to Outpost 4-ish. As soon as the team disembarked, the craft lifted off again, returning to orbit to avoid detection. Jason surveyed the terrain, a harsh rocky landscape with minimal vegetation and numerous ravines carved by ancient water flows, the perfect environment for an unconventional approach. Drak, deploy the decoys as planned. Sorvin, begin electronic countermeasures. Both specialists moved to execute their tasks with precision. Drak placed small, sophisticated devices at strategic points within the canyon, coalition thermal and acoustic decoys that would simulate the presence of a much larger force. Sorvin activated a suite of electronic warfare systems designed to confuse Krax's sensors without completely blinding them. The key, Jason explained as they worked, is not to prevent detection entirely, but to make our signature confusing and inconsistent. We want them to know something is coming from this direction, but not exactly what or how many. When the preparations were complete, Jason activated his tactical display. Phase 1 begins now. Move out. Rather than following the most direct path toward the outpost, the team proceeded in a seemingly erratic pattern, sometimes doubling back or moving perpendicular to their objective. To any observing Kraxis commanders, it would appear either as incompetence or as an attempt at deception. Either way, it would demand attention. Southern sensors have detected movement, Sorhan reported, monitoring Kraxis communications through his specialized equipment. They're dispatching reconnaissance drones. Perfect, Jason replied. Drak, time for the first surprise. The Macassipian unfolded a compact launcher from his exoskeleton and loaded a specialized projectile, one of Jason's custom requisitions. When the first reconnaissance drones appeared over a nearby ridge, Drak fired with mechanical precision. The projectile didn't target the drones directly. Instead, it detonated in the air between them, releasing a cloud of microscopic reflective particles, a simple technology developed on Earth centuries ago to confuse radar systems. The Kraxis drones, expecting sophisticated electronic countermeasures, were instead blinded by what amounted to technological chaff. Their sensors, designed to penetrate electronic defenses, were overwhelmed by thousands of conflicting physical return signals. Kraxis Command is deploying ground forces, Sorvin announced, his fluid channels pulsing with excitement. Tactical teams redirecting from eastern and northern sectors. How many? Jason asked. 3 full security detachments, approximately 30% of their mobile defense capacity. Jason nodded with satisfaction. Phase 2. Let's increase the pressure. The team advanced toward a secondary position, still maintaining their unpredictable movement pattern. When they reached a vantage point overlooking a narrow approach to the outpost's southern entrance, Jason deployed the second of his specialized tactics. Drak, sonic disruptors. Sorvin, prepare to exploit the communication gap. Drak placed several small devices on the rocky ground. When activated, they began emitting specific sonic frequencies, not the typical disruptive white noise used in coalition operations, but precisely modulated tones that would interfere with Kraxis short-range communications without disrupting their long-range systems. This will force their ground teams to rely on primary communication channels, Jason explained, which means their command will have direct tactical control. Sorvin completed the thought, understanding dawning, eliminating field-level decision-making. Exactly, and centralized command always reacts more slowly than distributed authority. As predicted, The Craxus response became more rigid and predictable as ground teams lost local communication capabilities. Their movements followed standard protocols, exactly what Jason had counted on. Phase 3, he announced. Let's show them what we're really capable of. The team split up, with Drac taking a position that offered clear lines of fire toward the outpost's defensive emplacements. Sorvin moved to an elevated ridge where his specialized equipment could maximize its effectiveness. Jason advanced alone toward a narrow ravine that would bring him closest to the southern entrance. Commence synchronized operations on my mark, Jason instructed. 3, 2, 1, mark. Drac opened fire with suppressive weaponry, targeting automated defense turrets with remarkable precision. Simultaneously, Sorvin activated a full-spectrum electronic warfare package, temporarily blinding Craxus sensors throughout the southern quadrant. Under this cover, Jason sprinted forward with a speed that would have surprised even his teammates. Human musculature, evolved on a high-gravity world, gave him explosive acceleration that few coalition species could match. He reached the outer defensive perimeter in seconds, planting specialized charges at strategic points. These weren't designed to breach the defenses, merely to create the impression of an imminent breach attempt. Charges set, he reported, withdrawing to position Alpha. As Jason retreated, the charges detonated in sequence, creating a spectacular display that suggested a major assault was imminent. Craxus defensive systems automatically redirected additional resources to the threatened sector, including, critically, forces from the eastern approach. Eastern team reports minimal resistance. Zarlax's voice came through the secure comm channel. They've breached the first security layer without detection. Diversion successful. Vexel acknowledge. Lieutenant Chen, maintain pressure for another 15 minutes, then execute tactical withdrawal. Copy that, Commander. Jason rejoined his team at their fallback position. Drac, Sorvin, you heard the commander. Let's give them 15 more minutes of chaos. The next quarter hour saw a masterclass in tactical deception. The team created the illusion of multiple breach attempts, forcing Craxus defenders to constantly redistribute their forces. By the time they began their withdrawal, more than 70% of Outpost 4's defensive capabilities had been focused on a southern attack that was never actually intended to succeed. Eastern team has reached the command center, Vexel reported as Jason's team reached their extraction point. Mission successful. Primary objectives secured. As the extraction craft descended to retrieve them, Sorvin's fluid channels pulsed with what Jason had come to recognize as respect. Your tactics were illuminating, Lieutenant. Indeed, Drac agreed, his mechanical voice somehow conveying admiration. Probability calculations failed to account for psychological impact on enemy command structure, a significant oversight in my analytical parameters. Jason smiled. Sometimes the best technology is the technology you don't use. Unpredictability is its own weapon. 2 days later, the Twilight Battalion assembled in the Grand Hall of the Rigelian Starbase. High General Drovak himself had arrived to recognize their unprecedented success. The Craxus offensive had been neutralized before it could begin, with minimal coalition casualties. As Commander Vexel recounted the operation details to the assembled dignitaries, Jason stood at attention with the rest of the battalion. He noticed something different in how the other specialists regarded him now. Not merely curiosity or skepticism, but something approaching respect. The integration of Lieutenant Chen's tactical approach proved decisive. Vexel concluded. The Craxus, anticipating standard coalition methodologies, were unprepared for strategies that deliberately violated tactical orthodoxy. High General Drovak stepped forward, his metallic skin gleaming under the ceremonial lights. This operation has demonstrated the value of tactical diversity within our forces. For too long, the coalition has relied on standardized approaches that, while efficient, have become predictable to our adversaries. The general's gaze swept across the assembled battalion before settling on Jason. Lieutenant Chen, step forward. Jason complied, maintaining proper coalition military protocol as he had been trained. Your contribution to this mission extends beyond the immediate tactical success, Drovak stated. You have provided a valuable lesson to the entire coalition military structure, that sometimes our greatest strength lies not in technological superiority, but in the diversity of thought our member species bring to the collective. Thank you, General, Jason replied simply. In recognition of your exceptional service, you are hereby promoted to the rank of captain, with a special assignment as Tactical Innovations Officer for the Twilight Battalion. You will be tasked with training our specialists in human combat methodologies and developing new hybrid approaches that combine the strengths of multiple species. The announcement sent a ripple of surprise through the assembled battalion. A human, not only accepted but elevated to a position of influence within the coalition's elite unit. Unprecedented. Captain Chen. Vexel addressed him, using the new rank deliberately. Do you accept this assignment? Jason stood straight, aware of the historical significance of this moment, not just for himself, but for humanity's place within the galactic community. I accept, Commander, and I look forward to learning as much from the battalion as they might learn from me. As the ceremony concluded, Krell approached Jason, the Braxian's earlier skepticism replaced with grudging respect. Your tactics were unorthodox, Captain, but effective. Sometimes unorthodox is exactly what's needed, Jason replied. Perhaps, Krell conceded. The General has ordered a demonstration of your methods for the entire battalion tomorrow. I admit, I am curious. I'll try not to disappoint. The training arena was filled to capacity the next morning. Every member of the Twilight Battalion, along with several high-ranking coalition officers who had arrived with General Drovak, gathered to observe the humans' methods. Jason stood in the center, dressed in standard coalition combat gear. Commander Vexel addressed the assembly. Captain Chen will demonstrate alternative combat approaches developed on Earth. These methods may seem primitive or inefficient by our standards, but their effectiveness has been proven in actual combat. I expect every specialist to approach this with an open mind. Vexel turned to Jason. The arena is yours, Captain. Thank you, Commander. Jason surveyed the assembled specialists. I understand many of you still have doubts about human combat capabilities. Rather than tell you about them, I'd prefer to demonstrate. He glanced toward General Drovak. With the General's permission, I'd like to request a volunteer for a practical demonstration. Drovak nodded his assent. I'll volunteer, came a voice from the front row. It was Tarvex, the battalion's close combat specialist, a Jaraxian with enhanced reflexes and reinforced exoskeletal plates, among the most physically formidable species in the coalition. Perfect, Jason said as Tarvex stepped into the arena. Specialist Tarvex, I understand you're undefeated in battalion combat trials. 14 cycles without defeat, Tarvex confirmed, his voice a grating rumble. Impressive. For this demonstration, I propose a simple challenge. You will attempt to incapacitate me using standard coalition close combat techniques. I will defend using human methods. Tarvex's feeding mandibles clicked with what might have been amusement. And the parameters for victory. Incapacitation or surrender, Jason replied, but with one additional condition. He reached into a pocket and produced a strip of black cloth. I'll be blindfolded. A murmur ran through the assembled spectators. Even Vexel seemed taken aback. Captain, the commander began, while I appreciate your confidence, there are safety protocols. I assure you, Commander, this is a standard training method from Earth. The purpose is to demonstrate that human combat isn't just about physical capability. It's about awareness, adaptation, and using an opponent's assumptions against them. After a moment's hesitation, Vexel nodded. Proceed, but with caution. Jason secured the blindfold over his eyes, then assumed a relaxed stance in the center of the arena. Whenever you're ready, Specialist. Tarvex circled Jason cautiously, his movements nearly silent despite his considerable mass. The Jaraxian was renowned for his speed, especially surprising given his size. The attack came without warning, A blindingly fast strike aimed at Jason's midsection. But before the blow could land, Jason pivoted smoothly away, as if he had somehow sensed it coming. Tarvex paused, reassessing, then launched a combination attack, a feint followed by a sweeping leg strike. Again, Jason evaded with minimal movement, his responses efficient and precise. The pattern continued for several minutes, Tarvex attacking with increasing intensity and complexity, Jason defending with an almost preternatural awareness of his opponent's movements, all while blindfolded. Finally, Tarvex committed to a powerful lunging attack. Jason not only evaded but countered, using the direction's momentum to redirect him into a controlled takedown. Before Tarvex could recover, Jason had secured a submission hold that neutralized the specialist's superior strength. "I yield," Tarvex announced, genuine respect in his gravelly voice. Jason removed the blindfold and helped Tarvex to his feet. The arena was silent. "What you just witnessed," Jason addressed the assembly, "isn't unique to me. It's standard training for human special operations units. We call it sensory deprivation combat, training to fight effectively when one or more senses are compromised." He turned to face General Drovek and Commander Vexel. "Humans evolved as persistence predators on a high-gravity world with thousands of apex predators. Our combat instincts aren't based on superior technology or physical attributes. They're based on adaptation, awareness, and exploiting environmental and psychological advantages." Drovak stepped forward. "Impressive, Captain. But how does this translate to coalition operations against technologically advanced adversaries like the Craxus?" "That's the most exciting part, General," Jason replied. "When you combine human adaptive tactics with coalition technology and the unique abilities of each member species, you create a hybrid approach that no enemy can predict or counter effectively." He gestured to the assembled specialists. "Imagine Kalian infiltration specialists applying human sensory awareness techniques, or Mekasapian heavy weapons platforms deploying with human-inspired unpredictable movement patterns, or Braxian scouts using human ambush tactics." Understanding dawned in Vexel's expression. "A complete tactical reformation. Not replacement, Commander, evolution. Taking the best of what each species brings to create something greater than the sum of its parts." As the demonstration concluded, specialists gathered around Jason, curiosity overcoming their previous skepticism. Questions came from all directions, each specialist eager to understand how human methods might enhance their own capabilities. Zarlax approached Vexel, who watched the scene with newfound appreciation. "It seems your expendable asset has become quite valuable, Commander." "Indeed," Vexel acknowledged. "Perhaps there is more to learn from these Deathworlders than we anticipated." In the midst of the crowd, Jason caught General Drovek's evaluating gaze. The Titanian gave a subtle nod of approval before departing. The message was clear. The age of standardized coalition tactics was ending. A new era of hybrid warfare, inspired by the adaptability of Earth's most successful predator, had begun. And for Jason Chen, this was just the beginning of humanity's contribution to the stars.